Like and subscribe to PalsFundamentals on YouTube for more videos like this. Sources linked below. Welcome, everyone, to this North Atlantic news report. We'll be looking at some recent political, news, and economic happenings across the region. We're pulling everything straight from the source materials you shared.
That's right. And just to be clear, our goal here is simply to present the information from those sources. We're
Yeah.
not adding our own opinions or, speculating, just laying out the news as reported.
Exactly. Think of it as just exploring what's been going on. Today, we're going country by country. We'll start with Iceland, then head over to Greenland, Shetland after that, and we'll finish up in the Faroe Islands. So let's get started with Iceland.
Okay, Iceland first. There's news about the silicon smelter near Husavik. The operator, PCC, announced they're going to temporarily close it down starting July 2025, and that means, unfortunately, about 80 layoffs.
80 layoffs. Wow, yeah, that's quite a number for that area. What reasons did the company give?
Well, uh, the sources mentioned several things. It seems to boil down to challenges in the global silicon market. Specifically, they talked about cheap imports, mostly from China,
Mhm.
plus things like trade wars and subsidized silicon from elsewhere driving prices down.
Right, so big global pressures hitting locally. The sources also said PCC actually filed a complaint about this with the Ministry of Finance.
They did. And it sounds like European producers generally are asking for protective tariffs, sort of a wider issue than just this one plant.
Okay. And PCC, are they just shutting down or?
They said they plan to use the downtime for modernization, optimizing things. They described the facility as pretty advanced, environmentally speaking. The idea is to restart when market conditions get better.
Still tough locally, the municipality Nordic called it a significant blow. They put it in perspective, saying it's like 3,500 people losing jobs in Reykjavik. Really makes you understand the local scale.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, shifting gears now. Different kind of energy news. Reykjavik Geothermal. They've got a project starting up in Tenerife, Spain. They're going to be drilling for geothermal energy there starting this autumn.
Tenerife. Interesting. How deep are they drilling?
The plan is between 2,500 and 3,000 meters deep in the western and southern parts of the island. They're trying to confirm if the conditions are right, for clean local energy.
And why is that so important for Tenerife?
Well, right now, they rely massively on imported oil. Over 80% of their electricity comes from diesel. And they don't have much hydro potential, limited space for wind or solar, too. So geothermal could be, well, huge for them.
Yeah, makes sense. The CEO, Magnus Asbjornsen, called it a tremendous opportunity. He mentioned the volcano there as a good sign. Said surveys suggest a good chance of finding hot water at the right depth could really change their energy situation.
Definitely sounds like it. Okay, next up, economic news from Statistics Iceland. Inflation figures.
Right. What's the latest number?
It's down slightly, now at 3.8%. It was 4.2 last month, so it's back to the March level.
Okay, 3.8%. Any details on what went up or down?
Yeah, the overall consumer price index rose just 0.20% since April. If you take out housing costs, it barely moved, up 0.02%. Food and drinks went up a bit, 0.69%. Owner-occupied housing also up 0.73%. But international flights dropped quite a bit, 7.3% down. Generally, the trend's been downwards over the last couple of years, even with that little rise last month.
Okay. There's also a rather concerning report about weapon use.
Yes, the deputy chief of Iceland's Special Police Unit highlighted a sharp increase, more call-outs and more serious incidents involving weapons.
How sharp an increase are we talking?
Well, the numbers are pretty stark. Back in 2016, there were 174 call-outs. Last year, around 480. And just this year so far, 175 incidents already, so it's on track to be even higher.
Wow. And it's the type of weapon, too, right?
Yeah.
More knives.
Exactly. He specifically mentioned knives and edge tools are becoming much more common. They account for 70% of the weapon call-outs this year. That's 126 incidents already.
And this is similar to other Nordic countries.
And unfortunately, yes. It mirrors trends seen elsewhere in the Nordics. And another worrying point they mentioned is the average age of the people involved seems to be dropping.
Not good. Okay, one last item from Iceland. The search near Urfaresi.
Yes, that search for a missing man concluded today. Sadly, a deceased person was found.
Oh, right. Do they know who it is?
Police believe they do know the identity, yes. It was a big search effort, around 200 people involved,
Right.
plus a helicopter, drones, boats, a real community response.
Okay. Tragic end to that. Right, let's move on from Iceland now and turn to Greenland.
First up in Greenland, the government is considering a new integration law.
An integration law, what's driving that?
Well, the Nálingur for labor market Bentirak Audison, basically said they need a law to help newcomers, help them learn the language, culture, values,
Yeah.
and connect with locals.
Okay, and the context here involves workers coming in.
Yeah, there's been a fast-track scheme for workers, and it led to like a tripling of Asian workers in just 6 years. And that's apparently affected the work culture a bit. Locals tend to change jobs more often, while the newcomers are often more stable employees.
Interesting dynamic.
Plus, there are demographic worries. Population might shrink 20% by 2050, lots of older people retiring. They need workers. But the current labor law is pretty old, from '92, last updated 2017. Might need changes to prioritize residents more, which wasn't really the focus when they started the fast track. And it seems integration policies aren't widespread, yet only one municipality, Sermersooq, has one right now.
Right, lots to consider there. Okay, what else from Greenland? Something about underground research.
Yes, an agreement renewal. The Greenland Self-Government and GEUS, that's the Geological Survey for Denmark and Greenland, they've extended their cooperation on researching Greenland's subsoil. It now runs until 2030.
Who signed off on that?
Naja Nathanielsen, the Naalakkersuisuk for Mineral Resources, and Denmark's climate minister, Lars Eigaard.
And the point of this research?
It's directly tied to the government's goal of developing the raw materials sector.
Yeah.
Boosting Greenland's income, making it a key industry for them.
Got it. Now, this next one sounds unusual. Greenlandic fishing nets helping Ukraine.
Yeah, it's quite a story. A Danish organizer, Karl Futtrup, he's arranging for used fishing nets to be sent to Ukraine. The idea is they can be used for protection against drones.
Protection against drones. How effective is that?
Well, Futtrup hopes to send maybe 1,000 to 2,000 tons. He believes they can save lives and equipment. He even claimed one small net caught 10 drones.
Wow. And Royal Greenland is involved?
Sort of, but indirectly. The sources clarify that Royal Greenland delivers their used nets to Thyborøn Harbor for recycling anyway. They aren't shipping them directly to Ukraine. It seems the Danish defense is paying to transport them from the harbor to Poland, and then they go to the Ukrainian army. So it's part of a bigger effort.
Ah, okay. That makes more sense. Good clarification. What about students? News for Greenlandic students in Copenhagen.
Yes, good news. Starting August 1st, 12 rooms at Solgade Collegium, right in central Copenhagen, will be reserved specifically for Greenlandic first-year students.
That's great. What's the thinking behind that?
It's an initiative by Det Grønlandske Hus. They want to provide safe housing, obviously, but also build a community. The Collegium usually has international students from a program called DIS, so the idea is to help the Greenlandic students connect with them too.
Can they stay longer than a year?
Yes, they can apply for extensions. And the funding for this comes from money set aside in the Danish parliament by the Greenlandic parties, IA and Siumut.
Nice initiative. Okay, turning back to Nuuk, there was an arrest at the airport.
A 32-year-old man was arrested. He was apparently trying to leave the country with a large amount of cash. He's been charged with money laundering.
How was he caught?
Customs raised the alarm. The amount of cash was large enough to be suspicious. Police asked for him to be detained for 28 days. There was a court hearing, but it was held behind closed doors, so there aren't many more details available right now.
Right. Okay, finally for Greenland, some political friction over a road project in Ivanatak Kommune.
Yeah, the local government majority, that's Siumut and Nalarak, they want to build a road between two villages, Ikersak and Kekertak. Surveys are planned for this summer.
But there's opposition.
Yes. The other parties, Democrated, Atasu, and IA, are against it. The vice mayor, Heidi Meller from Democratic, she called the plan unrealistic, expressed real concern.
What are her main points?
She questioned who really benefits. Said people in places like Upernavik or Kanak wouldn't use it, but would still help pay through taxes. She estimated the actual road would be much longer than the direct distance, maybe double the 40 kilometers by air, and she basically said the municipality can't afford it, pointing to a previous much shorter road expansion near the airport that cost 20 million DKK as an example of the high costs involved.
How are they planning to fund it?
The mayor apparently suggested a 1% tax increase from 44 to 45%. But Mueller also brought up the fact there's a planned vote on possibly splitting the municipality. So if it does split, who ends up paying for this potentially very expensive road? That's a big question mark.
Yeah, definitely a complex local issue. Okay, let's move on now. Across to Shetland.
All right, Shetland. First item is some concern about passenger behavior on the Northlink ferries. Mistreatment of staff and the vessels themselves.
Oh, what kind of behavior?
The managing director, Stuart Garrett, didn't give super specific details, but he voiced serious concern. He warned that antisocial passengers could be banned from traveling or even face criminal charges. Said his staff shouldn't have to put up with it.
Rightly so.
He did mention some incidents happening in cabins. The chairwoman, Mariah Glyle, said she was saddened by it, wondered if it's a growing problem. She suggested people need reminding not to take the service for granted.
Yeah, that's fair.
Garrett confirmed they keep records of incidents, called it very disappointing for the staff. Lyle agreed and hoped that banning people might actually happen as a deterrent. Affects everyone, staff, and other passengers.
Definitely. Okay, also from Shetland, an opinion piece in the Shetland Times about fishing.
Yes, by Daniel Lawson. He's the executive officer of the Shetland Fishermen's Association. It's quite critical of the UK government's handling of fishing access post-Brexit.
What's his main argument?
He basically says the government seriously undervalued access to Shetland's fishing grounds in negotiations. His view is that giving away that access so freely meant losing a key bargaining chip for getting more quota for Shetland boats. He admits they didn't lose the quota they already gained, but argues they missed a chance to get more, which would have really boosted the local economy.
So he feels they traded fishing interests for other benefits.
That's the core of it. He suggests the UK was trying to smooth trade with the EU, which helps other industries, but that fishing crews are effectively footing the bill for that. He used strong language, felt the EU took fishing rights from a baby, and the Prime Minister didn't really listen.
What about financial compensation? Was there a fund?
There was $360 million over 12 years, but Lawson dismisses that, compares it to what he estimates is £6 billion worth of access given to the EU over the same time. He argues any compensation should come from the EU, not the UK taxpayer. The piece also called for much stricter rules for EU boats fishing near Shetland, things like check-in points, better monitoring gear logs, stricter labeling to protect the fish stocks.
Right, it really shows how these big agreements play out on the ground. Okay, let's do our final stop, the Faroe Islands.
Last segment, Faroe Islands. There's a pilot project happening there looking at tourism, specifically its impact on society.
A tourism impact study. Who's involved?
A professor, Rachel Dodds, and her team. They're working closely with Faroes people, businesses, residents, local government, the tourism industry itself. Really trying to understand the challenges and the progress being made with tourism there.
And what's the main goal of the project?
It's about helping destinations shift how they measure success. Moving away from just counting the number of tourists, the volume, towards measuring the value tourism brings. And they see the Faroes as a perfect pilot destination because the Faroes seem willing to explore these new ways of thinking.
Interesting approach. Did Professor Dodds share any impressions from her visit?
She did. She mentioned the air quality, how clean and fresh it felt right away, the dramatic scenery, the tunnels connecting islands, the small villages. Said it was great for hiking with all the waterfalls.
Any downsides?
Just a minor practical thing. She mentioned her rental car's speed limit display seemed a bit out of date sometimes, which made her unsure of the local speed limits occasionally. A small thing.
Yeah, relatable. What was her overall take?
She said she might call the Faroes the land of maybe because of the weather changing all the time. But more thoughtfully, she reflected that as tourism grows, it could really change society there.
And the article connected this to a quote about languages.
Yes, quoting Goethe about knowing foreign languages helps you know your own. Then it drew a parallel, saying meeting tourists is like holding up a mirror to the Faroes themselves. It prompts questions like, what do they see in tourists? What does tourism really mean to them? And, importantly, how do they keep the essence of the Faroes intact as more people visit?
That's a deep thought. How to welcome the world but stay true to yourself. Who are the partners mentioned in the project?
Let's see. University of Toronto, Sacetries, Be Smart, Visit Faroe Islands, Norira, MyTax, and the HX Foundation.
Okay, well that seems to cover the main points from across the North Atlantic for this report.
That brings us to the end. Thanks for tuning in.
We hope this gave you a good overview of some key developments.
And just a final reminder, everything we discussed came straight from those source materials provided. No opinions, just the reported facts.
Right. It's interesting, though, hearing about everything from, global markets hitting local jobs to integration challenges to tourism, making people reflect on their own culture. Makes you think about how these communities balance their unique identities with these bigger external forces. Food for thought. Like and subscribe to PalsFundamentals on YouTube for more videos like this. Sources linked below.